So Victoria is on the brink of further eased restrictions, but there's this ongoing concern about this cluster that's emerged at a Southbank townhouse complex in Melbourne. And this morning, there have been 3 new cases reported. It's not clear exactly where they are, but at least they're all linked to existing cases. But that's on top of the 2 that were revealed yesterday. Reporter Dana Morse joins us now from Melbourne. Dana, g'day. First of all, just take us through the figures that have popped up in the last half hour or so.
Good morning, Joe. Well, we know that there are 5 new cases today. 2 of them were reported yesterday. They're known to be in this apartment building that is behind me. There are an extra 3 cases that have been recorded. We know that they're linked to known clusters as part of this outbreak, but we don't know which yet. But I can tell you that over 200 tests were done here at the King's apartment complex in Southbank yesterday, so it's very likely it could be more infections there.
Yeah. And what can you tell us about the timeline of infections at that complex you're standing in front of there?
Well, authorities have declared it a Tier 1 exposure site from the 2nd to the 14th of June. So that's quite a broad timeline to be looking at for possible transmission of the infection. And of course, the authorities are saying it's very likely that residents have given the infection to each other using things like communal hallways, communal doorways, and even the parking structure underneath. So it is of concern that it could have been spreading through this apartment complex for around 2 weeks.
And this has been emerging publicly since the weekend. What have authorities said so far about how this might affect any timing of the further easing of restrictions?
Look, we're hopeful that this particular apartment building outbreak won't affect the easing of restrictions too much because they are now in lockdown. We're expecting to hear a further update on the restriction changes today at the press conference. However, we do know that it's very likely that 25-kilometre limit for Greater Melbourne will lift and will likely see Greater Melbourne move to restrictions that are very similar to what's happening in regional Victoria at the moment. We also expect that there'll be a further easing of restrictions in regional Victoria to be announced later today.
Yeah, and Dana, we haven't got a time on that just yet?
We do. 1:15, we are expecting Martin Foley to stand up.
All right, good stuff. OK, Dana Morse reporting there from Melbourne. Yeah, so there'll be millions of people there in Victoria who are keen on hearing that announcement later today. And just repeating that news just through in the last half hour. So 5 new cases in total in the 24 hours to midnight last night. 2 of them had already been revealed yesterday who were at that Southbank complex. 3 extra on top of that this morning. We don't know exactly where they're from. So hopefully that won't have any negative impact on the further easing of restrictions. We'll be right across that story through the day, expecting that media conference from Victorian authorities at 1:15 Australian Eastern Standard Time. New South Wales authorities are investigating whether there's been another case of COVID-19 spreading among returned travellers in hotel quarantine. Reporter Lara Himes joins us now from Sydney. Lara, g'day. What can you tell us about these cases?
Good morning, Joe. Well, authorities are concerned because they haven't been able to identify how exactly the transmission occurred. It's involving 2 parties, a couple and an individual. The couple tested positive to COVID-19 on day 2 of their quarantine. That was on June the 3rd. The individual tested positive just 2 days later. Now, both parties were residing at the Radisson Blu Hotel in Sydney's CBD at the time. Authorities are pursuing 3 lines of inquiry. 1, it could have been transmitted on the flight home, both parties coming back to Australia on June the 1st on a flight from Doha. Secondly, it could have been during their transportation period. And third, it could have happened while both groups were in hotel quarantine. Now, a key piece of information to that is that both of those parties were in adjacent rooms. They tested positive to the UK strain, so this is the Alpha strain, no longer the dominant strain in Australia. That has been replaced by the Delta strain, also known as the Indian variant. But New South Wales Health have put out a recommendation that anyone who was staying on the 4th floor of the Radisson Blu Hotel from June the 1st to June the 5th, as well as the staff who were working on that floor at the time, to go and get tested, isolate and await further instructions from officials.
OK, Lara Himes reporting there from Sydney.